Hello, I'm David DeCosmo. Welcome to ECTV Live, a program that answers the question, what's happening and where? And I'm joined by my co-host, Rusty Fender, who, Rusty, you saved the day for me last week. 2017 came in with a cold and a cough for me and just put me down for the count. So
and I mentioned last year, I usually end the year with my one illness over Christmas week. I was fortunate this year, but you brought in the new year with one. Happy New Year, and good to see you. Sounding better, actually.
Well, coming along anyway. I just love to see events, happenings at this time of the year.
Because they're so rare.
Yeah, because otherwise it's such a dreary time of the year.
Absolutely.
So Bernie McGruel joins us from the Susquehanna River Corridor Association. And Bernie, you've saved the day with a special event that's coming up very, very shortly and is appropriately called the Shiver Fest. Well, I guess that's, what better title could you pick for an event that is basically outdoors and happening at this time of the year when the temperatures would tend to make us shiver just a bit. So this, as I understand it, is another attempt to make sure that people know not only that we have a river, that it is something positive in our society, and that it's usable virtually all year round.
Yes, it is, David.
Well, how did Shiverfest come about?
Well, several of my board members, one in particular, my current board president, Phil McCarthy, is a kayaker. And we got talking a couple of years ago, and he said, you know, there's nothing going on in the wintertime. Why don't we have a kayak race when the river's all frozen up and when it's snowing, and we'll call it Shiverfest, because we have Riverfest in the summertime.
Right.
So
one of your big events.
Yeah. So Shiverfest, what a great term, and it's crazy, but it's a lot of fun. And it's a 3-mile kayak race in the Lackawanna River in January. And this is our third year. And actually, I think this might be the warmest. The long-range forecast is looking at 50 degrees for Saturday.
Almost 60.
Really?
58.
Oh, really?
Wow. Let's hold them to
We've
that,
had colder Riverfest than that.
Oh, gosh, that's great.
But we did have ice and snow the last 2 years. So this will be maybe... so we won't have to shiver so much. We can really enjoy the river more. But it's an event for not the faint-hearted. You know, if you don't have the stones, you want to throw in the towel. But if you got the right stuff, we'd like to get you out in the river and safely on the river and paddling your buns off. And then we're going to have an after party. We call it a thaw party, over at the Backyard Ale House Saturday afternoon from 2 to 5. But the event is taking advantage of 2 new river recreation spots that we've developed on the Lackawanna River in Scranton. And they are our launch point, which is at, we call it Parker Street Landing. It's over by the Parker House in North Scranton, right by the Parker Street Bridge. It's just about a couple of blocks off North Main Avenue, and there's an area where some homes were demolished by the city for flood control. They were in the flood zone. So the land was just growing up weeds and trees and bushes, and some illegal dumpers found it, and there was lots of trash there, and a couple piles of tires. It ended up about 500 tires were dumped in several piles in the woods back there where the homes were demolished years ago. And so we had been looking for some funding to get rid of the tires. And we had started using that site a couple years ago as a launch site, because there was a little pathway down to the river, and there's a gravel bar there where you could put a canoe in and kayak in and take it in and out. But it was not the best area in the world because of all the trash, and it was overgrown. So we had an opportunity to get some funding to do a cleanup of the tires this year. And we worked with our friends at the Pennsylvania Environmental Council and Waste Management, and we got a couple of grants through the Keep America Beautiful Foundation and the Lowe's Home Center Lowe's Foundation, and we were able to get dumpsters and get rid of the tires. We filled up a huge 40-yard container with tires, just with tires.
Now you've done cleanups along the river for many years now, but I guess most of the material you recover, you're able to dispose of in a regular landfill. And tires, you're kind of stuck there.
Tires, we're stuck, and it's been a problem. And now TVs are becoming a problem.
Oh, really?
Old, especially the big old TVs, because there's no market for them on the recycling market. It's completely saturated. So, but the tires were the bigger issue there. And we did make arrangements. The Alliance Landfill is able to take them. They don't shred them, but they chunk them. Basically, they have a big machine that cuts them up into maybe hand-sized pieces, and they're able to mix them in with the daily cover that way. So that was how we were able to do it. We got the Alliance Landfill donated the airspace for the loaded tires, and then we got them cleaned up, and we got another big 40-yard container filled with litter and junk and debris and old backyard fences and construction debris and whatnot. So we got the site cleaned up pretty well, and then we were able to hire a contractor with an excavator to help clean the tires up. So the part of the grant was for the cleanup, and the other part was for beautification, keep America beautiful. So we were able to clear some of the overgrowth of weeds and invasive weeds on the lots, and we got recycled the milling materials from the City of Scranton's paving program. We got several truckloads of milling materials donated. So we used that to create a parking area at the dead end. There's actually two city streets over there, the dead end and the house lots that are remnant there, where the houses were torn down. So we took a couple house lots and we put the gravel there to create a parking lot, and then we graded an area to expand the pathway over to the riverbank, and we found some old railroad bridge abutment stones from the big old stone railroad bridges, and we put them on either side of the pathway down to the river, so somebody doesn't drive a vehicle down there, but it's plenty wide for a couple people to walk and carry canoes and kayaks down. And then we cut away the weeds and expanded the pathway down to the river.
You've got a beautiful launch area for the
so it's basically a brand new instant park, and that comes on the heels of the other work that we did 2 years ago at our other site, Sweeney's Beach.
And that's where the bridge was taken down, basically, like the Delaware-Lackawanna
that old Lackawanna Railroad
and that's
bridge.
where the DL&W crossed the D&H and went over toward Diamond K.
That's right, the old Diamond branch and the Green Ridge branch. So we worked with Lackawanna College, and they tore out the tracks on the old railroad grade through there to put a driveway in for their practice athletic fields, and that opened up a piece of city-owned property that was cut off by the old railroad bed, and it had become a dumping ground over the years. 50 years ago, the old city incinerator was there, and so there was a residue from that, big clinkers. And so we graded that out, got rid of a lot of garbage. We pulled another 6 dumpster loads of garbage out of there.
It's a shame if it's not developed. It's a dump.
2 years, and it was also a homeless camp. So we worked with the social service agencies, with the Community Intervention Center primarily, and reached out and networked with with some of the homeless community at the time. This is going back 3-4 years, and encourage them to get into housing programs, etc. But let everybody know that hey, you can't camp here anymore, and we got it all cleaned up. We were able to get a grant from Lackawanna County, and we collaborated with Trout Unlimited, and we were able to grade the site, clean up more of the trash, and again, more railroad bridge abutment boulders. We've got several truckloads of those recycled from when they were tearing down they had to replace the bridge abutment that collapsed on West Linden Street several years ago. So we worked with PennDOT and Fabcor, the contractor that had the job, and their folks delivered the stones over there. So we were able to use them to create some landscape elements and some terraces going down to the river. And at Sweeney's Beach, we call it a beach because there's a big gravel bar and there's a bend in the river, and you're right across from the farmer's market. The farmer's market's on the west side of the river, and a lot of people don't know how to find Sweeney's Beach, but if you can find Poplar Street, if you can find Scranton Prep and Bernie Honda on Wyoming Avenue, that's Poplar Street. Just follow that down before you cross over to the west side of the river, just down on the east bank of the river going to the south of the bridge. There is a gravel driveway, and that'll take you into Sweeney's Beach.
So is that from the standpoint of spectators that want to come and just watch the Shiver Fest, where would be the best area for them to watch the kayakers doing the racing?
Well, right at Sweeney's Beach if they want to get in on the finish line activities.
Okay.
And we have a fire pit there, so we're going to have a bonfire. We're bringing a couple used Christmas trees, and there's a few of them laying around.
And so that people know, now, if you just want to go and be a spectator, there's no cost involved.
No cost at all. In fact, anywhere along the river, it goes down. We launch at Parker Street, so anywhere, if you're in the Plott neighborhood, you walk up on the flood control levee. If you're over in Lower Greenridge, along Naog Avenue, Market Street, Greenridge Street, along where Albright Avenue used to run, over there by the Lace Works, over along Court Street.
All good spots.
Just all good. The levee is wide open. You get to see a big swath of the river there. So there'll be usually between 40 and 50 kayakers.
Wow.
And some of them are costumed. We had all kinds of wolves and eagles and birds and frogs and all kinds of critters last year. It really surprised me.
You know, since you mentioned that, you bring it up in terms of the costume, but I just heard a broadcast on one of the local radio stations where somebody was raving about the fact that near a local service station here in Scranton, they've seen a bald eagle sweeping around the area. Mm-hmm. Now, if that isn't a sign that the river is improving, with its conditions, I mean, you tend to bring that kind of wildlife back to the area.
Yeah, we have a lot of eagle sightings. There are several pair of eagles that are native to the watershed now. There's a couple brooding nests in the watershed. I'm not going to say where they are, but they're out in remote locations. But there's 3 mating pairs of eagles that I'm aware of. In or near the watershed. Now, there's a lot in the upper Delaware, but they're starting, as they have been reintroduced and very successful up along the Lackawaxen and the upper Delaware. They're starting to the descendants of those early generations are migrating over here. So we've had a few introduced pair and their descendants from the Delaware that have immigrated to the area.
That's wonderful.
You know,
really, it is.
I don't think you can put up a fence to stop eagles from. So the eagles are coming back. Fences or no, or walls or no.
Fish life.
And lots of fish. You know, it's well known that the Lackawanna is one of the most vibrant trout fisheries in northeast Pennsylvania. It rivals the upper Delaware. For native brown trout, which it's a European trout, but it's been here for over 100 years, like the rest of us that came over. Our ancestors came over from Europe. So we've got trout in the Lackawanna River. No kidding, Dave and Rusty. They're a good 24, 25 inches long, and they get to be 10, 12, 14 years old, and they get the long jaw. They're related to the salmon. So the bigger, mature trout really you might think it'd be a salmon, and they're reproducing in the river in certain times of the year when they do when they mate. The trout use their noses, if you could say, their snouts, and they'll push cobblestones into sort of a circle. Maybe about the size of a tire, and it'll create a little saucer, and the female lays her eggs there, and then they get fertilized, and then the hatchlings hatch in there, and the parents sort of keep an eye on them so the other critters don't eat them, and then when they get to fingerling size, they swim off. And
I have to give the River Corridor Association credit for a lot of this improvement in nature in RA, because you're helping it along. Shiverfest happens on Saturday,
January 14th, this coming Saturday.
Okay, this coming Saturday. Now, if you want to participate, actually put your kayak in, then there is a fee involved, because obviously there are costs involved with this. So if someone's interested, what does that cost and what do they have to do?
Well, if you want to participate in Shiverfest as a paddler, it's $30 to register, and you'll get, actually this year I'm wearing the first year's hat, and, oh no, we had towels the first year, so you don't want to throw in the towel, but I brought one along, and we had a nice knit hat last year. We're going to have a nice scarf this year, and it'll be embroidered with the Shiverfest and LRCA logos. So for $30, you get to participate in the event, and if you come in first, second, or third, you're going to get a prize. We got actually it's a cobblestone from the river with a hole drilled in it and a ribbon around it, and first, second, and third prizes, and then you can come to the thaw party afterwards. Now, if you
what about a spectator that might want to come to the thaw party?
Just if you want to come to the thaw party, you can buy your ticket in advance or buy it at the door. It's $20 per person, and that'll include some draft beer and some food. And the thaw party's at the Backyard Ale House over on Linden Street in downtown Scranton, and it's all afternoon from 2 p.m. till 5 p.m.
You might not need some thawing. You might have to have the air conditioning on this weekend, which is also a good thing.
It's going to be an interesting Saturday, I guess.
The fingers. Yeah. This is a milestone year for the River Corridor Association. How so?
We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. Who would have thought in the summer of 1987, when 400 people got together across the community to talk about the Lackawanna River and see what could be done to help improve it, that we'd still be doing it 30 years later.
You still had a slight name change on it too.
And we just did, yeah. We just changed our name. We're still LRCA. We've always been LRCA. Originally it was Lackawanna River Corridor Association, but 2 years ago we started doing some strategic planning and thinking about what our next 30 years are going to be, and what we need to do is expand what we've been doing along the river throughout the entirety of the watershed. So we changed the name, and what we do is conservation work. So we changed it to the Lackawanna River Conservation Association, and we're working throughout the 350 square miles of the watershed in 4 counties, parts of 4 counties, mostly in Lackawanna, but the confluence is down in Luzerne, and the headwaters are up in Wayne and Susquehanna, north of Uniondale and Forest City. We're also working out in the North Pocono Plateau, as that's where the headwaters of Roaring Brook and Spring Brook and Stafford Meadowbrook, that are very critical to our water supply, are located. So we're expanding our view. We're wanting to involve more people with the process, but this year we're in a mood to celebrate. The actual date that we incorporated the LRCA was October the 5th, which this year is a Thursday. So October the 5th, 2017, we're going to have a big community celebration at the ballroom in the Scranton Cultural Center that evening, and we'll be making some awards and some presentations and sharing some thank yous and getting everybody involved. But through the course of September, since we're doing our 30th anniversary, some of our members said, well, why don't we commemorate it in an interesting way? Let's do 30 things in 30 days. So we are actually going to have a whole month-long series of events between Labor Day and Columbus Day, and we're also going to have a cocktail party and a social event up in Carbondale, and another one in Pittston, because they're part of the watershed as well. And in between, we're going to have some theater. We're going to have some jazz. Actually, we're talking about an evening of jazz and cocktail party at Sweeney's Beach sometime in mid-September. We're going to have fishing activities. We're going to have paddle activities. We're going to have 5K runs. We're going to have some bike activities on the trail along the river, and we're going to have some educational activities, some outreach. We'll be doing some presentations in local schools, and involving. We'll probably have a cleanup and a few other things like that as well. So we're planning those now. If folks would like to get involved with us in celebrating the 30th anniversary, working on a committee, if you've got an idea for an event to focus on the river in your community, give us a call. at 347-6311 or email me at director@lrca.org, and we'd love to talk to you about our helping to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the LRCA.
You know, we talk about the cleanliness of the river. It's never been cleaner since the divergence of the sewage treatment plant, especially in Dunmore, in Scranton back in the late 60s, 1970, 71. But there's still a lot to be done with the cleanup along the shoulders of streets and things. That's the main thing that people have to get involved with.
Stormwater management is a huge issue, and especially in Scranton now with the divestiture of the sewer works.
Pennsylvania American Water.
The water company, the city and all the boroughs actually have huge responsibilities. So we've just initiated a new program with some support from the Scranton Area Community Foundation that we're calling the Lackawanna River Conservation Corps. And we want to get folks involved and aware of understanding what the role of the average homeowner, the property owner, the citizen that's concerned about how can I do a better job around my house and with my lifestyle to better protect the river.
How do you plan to do that?
Well, we're doing outreach right now. We're writing up a handbook that we're going to be sharing with different groups throughout the community. And instead of reinventing the wheel, if there's a community group in a borough or a township or another community organization like ours with similar aspects of our interests in the community, we're going to share some ideas and some methodologies to involve people in the distinct neighborhoods of the community. We've created 7 districts across the watershed as a way of getting a handle on this big 350 square mile area. We got 41 different municipalities, boroughs, townships, cities. We've got a dozen sewer authorities and 10 or 12 school districts. So to try to get all those different groups in those different neighborhoods working together, we wanted to create these watershed
People don't
districts.
realize all the dirt and the anti-skid and the materials from the winter on the side of the road. PennDOT only has a couple of state roads. They can't sweep all the roads. That's up to the city and those others, and the boroughs, and that's up to the local homeowners. I mean, a lot of these small towns, like where I live in Duryea and Old Ford, they don't have street sweepers and things like that. And that eventually, all that garbage and anti-skid finds its way to the storm drains and flush down. That's why you have why you have all these sandbars and all these gravel bars all over from all the
runoff,
decades of all this dirt along the side of the roads.
Well, you know, you've got a lot of active neighborhood watch groups in the city. And you certainly have a lot of active senior centers in the area. Those might be logical starting points.
We are reaching out to all those groups.
That's perfect.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and but even we can do a lot with volunteerism, but our government, our local governmental services have to be improved. They are totally insufficient for the 21st century, and we need. We're advocating with Scranton the creation of a stormwater authority. And the city, in conversations that I've had with council and the mayor and the staff of the mayor's staff at Scranton, there's an interest in understanding that they've really got to approach this. Now they're talking about retaining some planners to work on that, and we're anxious to work on that with them. But we'd like to see it expanded to include some of the other municipalities. Definitely Dunmore really needs to think about their opportunity to continue to successful collaboration over 50 years that they worked to operate and to develop our fantastic sewer authority that has not been sold. So let's get to the next step and look at reinvesting in the stormwater infrastructure, because that can have implications for mine reclamation and all the damages from the 100 years of the mining companies that still have destroyed our streams. There could be opportunities for a regional stormwater authority to work with a Bureau of Mine Reclamation to take federal mine reclamation money to go in to start addressing these long unmet needs along our tributary
And everybody benefits from positive results.
It's economic development. It makes sense to take care of our environment because that's the basis of our economy. So if we don't have a decent environment, we can't have a decent economy, or we can't have successful or healthy lifestyles going forward. So it's all related to that, and that's all part of the strategic thinking of the LRCA going into the next 30 years.
Well, your 30th year begins with Shiver Fest this coming Saturday. Quick review, if you will, as to start, finish, where people can watch.
Yep, okay. We've got our starting point, and you can stop over to the Parker House for breakfast. They're going to be open at 10. We'll have our registration table open sometime around 10 over there near the Parker House along our new parking area there, just next to the Parker Street Bridge. So that's 10 o'clock for registration opening and hanging around getting your gear ready. We're going to launch at noon right at the Parker Street Bridge from our new site there. Folks can get up to the river levees anywhere between noon and 12:30. I imagine, you know, depending on how cold it is, people tend to paddle faster because they want to get there, and they're competing too, because we do give prizes, and you want to have a good run. So between noon and 12:30, 12:45, there'll be paddlers on the river anywhere along where the flood control levees are in Scranton and down towards Albright Avenue. And then Sweeney's Beach is the landing point. We'll be getting everybody hopefully successfully, safely off the river by 1 o'clock, getting everybody's gear packed away and heading over to the Backyard Ale House at 2 o'clock.
And you say a bonfire at the
There'll be a bonfire at Sweeney's Beach. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention, and I want to because it's also Shiver by the River. Our my good friend Matt Byrne in the Scranton Running Company are running the Shiver by the River the same day. Their run is at 10 a.m. So I want to invite all the runners that are running in Shiver on the River to join us. Come on over and see some of your friends pulling themselves out and dunking themselves in the river at the finish line at Sweeney's Beach after you do the Shiver on the River run.
The trail by the river?
Yeah, they're running on the trail by the river, and although I think they're running down towards Taylor and back. But they're welcome to come on over, catch the landing activities between noon and 1 o'clock at Sweeney's Beach, and then everybody come on over and join us for the thought party at the Backyard Ale House between 2 and 5.
Okay, information about Shiverfest, information about the association, they contact you how?
They can get us on our website, www.lrca.org. They can go to Eventbrite, and there's check out Eventbrite, and what is it, the LRCA Shiverfest 2017 at eventbrite.com, and they can get their tickets there if they want to register. We've got a Facebook page, so they can look for LRCA and LRCA Shiverfest on Facebook.
Okay, Bernie Monroe, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate
it. Thank you, Dave.
Great event. Shiverfest sounds like a lot of fun.
All right.
Rusty, thank you so much.
Good to see you back, Dave.
Mark, thank you for keeping us in focus.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm David DeCosmo for ECTV Live. Until we see you again next week, here's hoping all your news is good.